Hey BookTube, how's it going? I'm here with Elmo, who is also wondering how everyone is doing. I assume for my fellow Americans, it's not spectacular. I assume for a lot of other people outside the United States, it's also not spectacular, because Lord knows there have been events around the world going on, but in the United States in particular, it feels like it's been a really heavy week with what President Trump is doing right now, trying to subject the American military and the National Guard on American citizens in what is pretty clearly an attempt to seize more power, dictatorial power. And so that's been going on in addition to what the protests that he's ostensibly responding to were about, which is ICE abducting people without due process so that they can be deported. There's that, and then just last night, of course, more relevant to people outside the U.S. as people within the U.S., is the news from the Middle East that Israel has attacked Iran in what they're referring to as a preemptive strike, which I take to basically be diplomatic code speak for an unprovoked attack on Iran. So we will see where that goes. It seems like something that is bound to end poorly. I am also, I will say, going to a No Kings protest tomorrow. That's happening tomorrow. There is also, of course, President Trump's birthday parade tomorrow, which is just surreal, I have to say. When I started this channel, well, when I returned to making this channel, I should say, I returned in small part because I felt like with the following that I have, I could talk about issues relevant to current events with the audience that I do have. And that's part of what made me kind of want to return, part of it. Because I felt so helpless for so much of this year. Because it's been a whirlwind year all around. Of course. The craziness didn't just start, of course. And I felt so helpless through so much of it. And I felt like maybe this is a small way where I can come on and make a small difference. And just talk about things that are relevant to current events. But when I came back, I also knew that I didn't want this channel to stop being what it is. I wanted this channel to stay a channel that is about books, about talking about books. Now, the thing is, as many others have made this point many times, and I think they're right, reading is fundamentally political. Books are political. And I'm going to talk about one book today that is quite political. But I wanted to balance the desire to talk about books that are relevant to current events and to talk about current issues, and to allow this channel to be a space where people can also come and escape for a while. Okay, there are a lot of booktubers out there I know who kind of take that approach. They make their videos and they don't talk about current events very much because they want their videos to kind of be a safe space for people to come on and just, forget about the shitstorm that's going on outside for a while and just think about what we're reading. Right? And I think that's perfectly valid. I love that people do that. I certainly watch plenty of those channels, and I would not push my own attitude onto them. But I kind of want to balance between talking about current issues and being a place where people can come to just not think about it, and also keeping the side of my channel where I do talk about current events, keeping it within the realm of what this channel is supposed to be about, keeping it about books. Because Lord knows I am not qualified to start talking about current events all the time. I'm just not qualified. I keep up with the news. I have my own pretty strong political stances, but that doesn't make me qualified to come on and start covering the latest news story for you all, of course. And so I want whenever I touch on current events or current issues, social issues that are relevant, I want it to be relevant to the books I'm actually reading. I don't want to just sort of throw it in as a side thing beside the other books that I talk about. So anyway, that's something I've been thinking about. I don't feel like I've quite arrived at a great balance, but So I wanted to start with that. And so I am going to, like I said, talk about one book that is, I think, quite topical. But I'll start with the main book that I kind of spent most of my week reading, which was Samuel Beckett's trilogy. So this is Samuel Beckett's trilogy of novels, Molloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. I am reading this with Ami, from Ami 1649. We are going to record discussions on all 3 books in the trilogy separately. I finished Molloy yesterday, and I'm waiting to continue with Malone Dies. I'm waiting to continue with that until Ami and I do our discussion. And I also don't want to talk about Molloy too much here, because I'm going to be doing a whole discussion on it, and I'd like my thoughts to be quite fresh for that. And I don't want to sort of spoil things, but Samuel Beckett is my favorite writer. This is my second time reading the trilogy as well, and I think I'm just going to get so much more out of it on this reading. I certainly got more out of Molloy on this second reading than on the first reading. So that was just a pleasure. And it'll be really interesting to see what I and Ami make of Malone Dies and The Unnameable, because those 2 books are much more of a challenge than Molloy. They are notoriously difficult to get through, and I found them difficult to get through when I first read them. So I'm hoping that I'll get a lot more out of those as well. So anyway, look out for the discussion on Molloy. I'm not quite sure at this point whether the discussion will be posted on just Ami's channel or both of our channels or what. He and I are going to talk about it, but when it happens, I will try to leave a link to it, either in a community post or in a Friday Reads or something. So that was my main reading for this week. The book that I'm focusing on now, so like I said, I'm taking a break from the trilogy because I finished Molloy. I don't want to start Malone Dies until Ami and I have done our discussion. So the book that I am trying to make big headway in is The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, translated from the French by Richard Philcox. So this was a buddy read with Patrice Jones from 2 Minutes on Books. She has decided to drop the book. She stopped reading it not quite halfway through it, I think. She just explained to me that she felt like she wasn't getting that much out of it. Her time would be better spent, she felt, on books that she was getting more out of than this one. And so I've decided to just try to plow through it a bit more quickly than we were. We had been working on this book for almost a month. And so I'm going to try to take a faster pace. I'm actually going to try to see if I can finish it over the weekend. I have about 90 pages left, and I still have time to read today. So, The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. I haven't talked about it a ton so far, but I'm finding it more interesting the more I read it. So, The Wretched of the Earth is a sort of classic text in post-colonial theory, right? So, Frantz Fanon, in the course of this book, walks you through the process by which a colonized country, with a focus on Africa, and especially on Algeria, because this was published in 1961 when the Algerian War of Independence was, I believe, still very much ongoing. So with a focus on Africa, but probably can be applied outside of Africa, he walks you through the process by which a colonized country comes to throw off imperial rule and become an independent country, and what it does once it's gained independence. So the first chapter in the book is all about violent uprising. So Frantz Fanon famously believed that the most effective way of throwing off colonial rule was through violent uprising. And so the first chapter in the book is called On Violence, and it's all about that. That was interesting. The part I'm in now, I'm actually finding almost more interesting. So the section that I'm in right now is about what a newly independent country does to sort of get on its own 2 feet. Economically, educationally, socially, and I'm finding all that really fascinating just in its own right, but also because a lot of it is really topical, I think. I'm finding it's surprisingly topical to the situation of the United States. Not just in the current day, but especially in the current day. And there's one quote that I actually wanted to read to you that really struck home for me. So Frantz Fanon in this section of the book talks a lot about educating the people and making sure that they kind of have a political and a social consciousness beyond just a sort of investment in their nation in a sort of nationalistic sense, or an investment in their ethnic group. Because I think he kind of believes that if national unity, if a nation is based entirely on just nationalism, or on tribalism or ethnicity, then that inevitably leads to kind of inter-ethnic or inter-tribal or international conflicts. And so he feels like there's this big need to educate the people and make sure that they have this kind of more sophisticated social and political consciousness, so that they don't fall into kind of tribalism. But he talks a lot also about how important an educated populace is to maintaining a good government. So, and that's what this quote is about. So here's what he says that really struck home for me. But political education means opening up the mind, awakening the mind, and introducing it to the world. It is as Aimé Césaire said, to invent the souls of men. To politicize the masses is not and cannot be to make a political speech. It means driving home to the masses that everything depends on them, that if we stagnate, the fault is theirs, and that if we progress, they too are responsible, that there is no demiurge, no illustrious man taking responsibility for everything, but that the demiurge is the people, and the magic lies in their hands, and their hands alone. I found that really powerful and really timely. I'm finding a lot in here like that. I know, and there's another really poignant point where he says that governments get the people they deserve, and likewise the people, in the long term at least, get the government they deserve, which I found very poignant. And very poignant in the sense of not just what's going on right now in the US, but really what's been going on for a few decades, basically since I have been aware of the political landscape of the US. I feel like I've seen these ideas being really relevant. So anyway, I'm finding this interesting. I know I've expressed some misgivings about it. I do kind of wish there were more political detail in it, or sorry, historical detail in it. I kind of wish he used more historical examples to back up what he says. He does occasionally use some examples, especially from Algeria, from the Algerian independence movement. But a lot of it does kind of just feel like Frantz Fanon saying what's going to happen and just kind of expecting that you'll take his word for it. Now, what he says will happen makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what he says and what we're seeing in the US now, among other things. But I would like it to just be, I wish it were felt a bit more evidence-based, a bit more backed up, you know, in the sense of backing it up with evidence, not in the other sense. So, yeah, I'm hoping to kind of finish this weekend. I am finding it really well written, really rhetorically powerful. It kind of reads like a speech, actually, and I hope that the quote that I read kind of drives that home. So, anyway, that's The Wretched of the Earth. All right, and then the other books are just the books that I've been chipping away at, which you've heard me talk about. Sylvia Plath, The Collected Poems. I just made it to one of my favorite Sylvia Plath poems, which is called Tulips. I just love Tulips. It is such a haunting and beautiful poem. I was considering reading the whole thing to you in this video, but it's a lengthier poem, so I'm not going to do it. But I'll read the first stanza because I just love it so much. So this is the first stanza of Tulips by Sylvia Plath. The tulips are too excitable. It is winter here. Look how white everything is. How quiet, how snowed in. I am learning peacefulness, lying by myself quietly, as the light lies on these white walls, this bed, these hands. I am nobody. I have nothing to do with explosions. I have given my name and my day clothes up to the nurses, and my history to the anesthetist, and my body to surgeons. Yeah, I'm resisting reading on because I just love tulips. So I'm excited to have reached that point in Plath's career where she's writing a lot of those really famous poems. I think I'm gonna get into a really good space in the collected poems. And then there's the King James Bible. I'm still in the Book of Ezekiel. Book of Ezekiel, again, very trippy, which is kind of the most kind of fun part about it. It too is very rhetorically powerful. As I've been reading through these Old Testament prophets, I've been trying to copy down my favorite quotes. And I'm finding that hard with Ezekiel because a lot of it is just so powerful, so rhetorically powerful that, you know, I'd be copying down half the book. So, but I'm really liking it. And then Christianity, the first 3,000 years. I just got done in this with the section on St. Augustine, which is really cool. It's cool, but it's also a little bit troubling. I mean, St. Augustine, I guess I didn't realize kind of how terrible he was. He sounds like he was kind of a terrible person. Like, he supported the persecution of non-Catholics really, really vehemently. And Diarmaid MacCulloch kind of talks about how that side of him has gone on to be very influential. Go figure. But there's also a lot of really fascinating ideas in him, in his work about things like free will, right? There's the whole Pelagian controversy with Pelagius, right? And Augustine really was hostile to Pelagius. And there's also the idea of the Trinity, which he was very influential in how that is conceived in the Catholic Church. Not so much in the Eastern Church. Actually, the Eastern Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, pretty hostile to Augustine, which I have to say, I'm kind of sympathetic. But, so, this continues to be just brilliant. So, I won't talk about it too much because I bring it up every week. So, anyway, I will leave it at that. Hopefully this video is not too long. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all soon. All right?